What up, everybody? You're now tuned into Jaguars Daily. I'm your host, Brandon Lampley, and we give you Jaguars news daily. Now, over the last couple of days, there's been a few reports have come out. I've talked about some of them. Well, actually, both the two major ones, of course. Travis Etienne reportedly will not be tagged by the Jaguars. We talked about that, and how much is too much for Etienne because the tag is 14, I think, and a half mil for the running back position, and I think on the market he was going to get between that 8 and 12 range. So it just depends on if a team comes through and blows his socks off and backs the Brinks truck up, as I like to say. um Also, Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter, his role going forward. It's been reported, by so outlet media sources and things like that. And anytime you hear stuff like this, there's maybe somebody in the building gave information to somebody or whatever, because there's no official Jaguars report about it. That he will be cornerback number one and basically wide receiver four. He's going to start at corner and have packages at wide receiver, which is not news. It's not news. It was funny to see that circulating around now, and also a couple of guys who could potentially not be on the team. But there is paths to where they are still on the team, but would not be surprised if any of them are not on the team at some point going into the year, or a trade bait in the middle of the year to get better in certain spots. So we'll start out with Travis Hunter, of course. And with Travis, man, um, this is not news. This is not news. He's going to be your starting corner. Your starting corner. My expectation for him is to be a top 10 corner next year. And that's what he is. I mean, from the beginning, he can roll out of the bed and play cornerback. That's what he's always been. His work that he's needed to work on the most is wide receiver, and that's why he played as much wide receiver as he did, because that's the work. That's where he needed to work the most. Now you have a really talented, kind of crowded wide receiver room now with Parker Washington emerging, Jacoby Myers being acquired midseason. Excellent trade for them last season, and of course Brian Thomas Jr. Those are your top three right there. And so, who is he going to push off the field to get snaps, especially when they're only going three wide? Now, four wide, of course, he'll be out there, but when they're in three wide, who's he taking snaps from? Is it Jacoby Myers? At this point, probably not. Parker Washington, probably not. Brian Thomas Jr. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But we'll talk about him a little later. But this isn't news as far as Travis doing this. I mean, if you were a Jaguars fan and you followed the team even somewhat, especially the news surrounding Travis Hunter, this is known. This is known. I guess that report was for the media and the football world at large, because the Jaguar fans, you knew this. I knew this. I'm not a source inside the building, or sources with the coaches or any of the officials or anything like that, or the front office. No, but I knew this. I knew this before they reported this. So this was not news, at least to me. At least to me. But in my expectation, yes, him a top 10 cornerback next year, and he's ready. He's ready and primed to do that, man. I personally think if him and Jordan Lewis were in the secondary against Buffalo, we win that game. We win the game. And they say what you want, feel how you want to feel. That's my opinion. If Jordan Lewis is starting against Buffalo and Travis Hunter is starting against Buffalo, we win that game, because those guys are playmakers, and you missed those playmakers in the secondary. You did, and why? And corner is a top need now, because most likely Monteric Buster Brown might not be back, but there's a possibility he will be back to shore up that other corner spot opposite Travis and Jordan Lewis. Greg Newsome most likely will not be back. He's going to command, I think, a little more on the market than the Jaguars are going to be willing to pay him. And that's just what it is. But Travis Hunter being the CB1 and essentially wide receiver 4, it's not news, man. It's not news. It's not news. So to that, I just say, duh. So it is what it is. But man, we're gonna leave it right there. I just had to touch on that again because I've talked about this before, but I want to keep everybody up to date on the news and everything that's surrounding the Jags. So in closing, for Travis Hunter, a CB1, essentially wide receiver four, and wide receiver four does not mean that he's only going to play like 5 to 10 snaps on offense. Look, man. This thing is fluid. Now, him being the starting corner, that's solid. I think that's set in stone. He's going to play every snap on defense. Now, offensively, it's going to depend on his production and the other guys. It's going to have a few factors as far as how much he plays wide receiver. But if he's on the heater, man, and he's your best guy, they say we in week 5 and these guys can't, they're not really getting open, or teams are really keying in on Parker Washington and Jacoby Myers, and Brian Thomas Jr. is a no-show, and he's out there making plays. You better believe that he's going to play the majority of the offensive snaps. I mean, that's just what it's going to be. So this is not putting Travis in a box. Don't forget that. This is not putting Travis in a box. This is saying, hey, we need him at corner. Corner is going to be number 1, and then wide receiver, we'll see. So I'm pretty sure that they've talked about this. This plan has been in place for a long time. Even before the injury, this plan was already in place. But we're going to leave it right there. We're going to talk about Arik Armstead. Yes, Arik Armstead. And these are the three guys I'm going to talk about: Arik Armstead, Walker Little, and Brian Thomas Jr. have the potential to no longer be on the team coming up this season, or be a trade mid-season if teams dangle something out there very, very nice, and Jaguars are willing to bite on it and move on from them. But there's also a path to where all of them stay as well, but they are cap casualties, or trade bait, as they would say. So for our Arik Armstead's cap hit is like $19 million. Yeah, his cap, it's like $19 million. You can restructure and get about almost $10 million if they restructure. Of course, convert some of it into a signing bonus to free up cap. They can reportedly restructure a couple guys from Arik Armstead to Walker Little to Foyesade Oluokun, Josh Hines Allen, just to name a few, and get about $61 million in cap, and that'll be able to have them maneuvering free agency and at least go after that defensive tackle or another corner as they see fit. But Arik Armstead is a candidate for a post June 1 cut because he's a little older. Of course, the money that he's making. Now, he did have an injury last year. Before that injury, because he took a lot of criticism in 2024 because, and people talk about him playing out of position. He wasn't playing necessarily out of position because it's a position he's played before. That right there is just, I think it was that coaching staff. It was their time to go. Ryan Nielsen was an abject failure here. And reportedly, they didn't like him from the jump because he came in, like he was King Kong, like he was Kim Jong-un, like it's my way or the highway. And the guys didn't take well to that. And it showed because they did not play for him. They legit quit in a few games in 2024. Go look at the tape. They did. They quit. It's just what happened. But Arik Armstead, I think, was a victim of that, because going into the season in 2025, the first part of the season before he got hurt, unfortunately, dude was playing some good ball, man. He saved that San Francisco game, man. That was like a poetic moment. You go back to your old team that drafted you and you make the play to win the game and get the game ball. Like, that was awesome. That was awesome. But once he got hurt, his production dipped. Same with Trayvon Walker. Those guys got banged up. So, the goal is to be healthy going into the latter part of the season and into the playoffs, of course, for every single team. But especially for those guys like Trayvon Walker and Arik Armstead, because once they got hurt and their production dipped, You seen how it affected the rest of the defense from time to time. But Eric, what do I think they'll do? I think it depends, man. It depends. If let's say they go get a John Franklin Myers, I think they may do or want to. He's definitely a candidate to be cut instead of restructured. Um, if that happens, I think he's more cut than restructured. Now, let's say they don't get one of those the top tackles that they want to come in and give that inside push. Then I think they'll draft a guy or two, and then he'll be a restructure candidate. And of course to bring him back, which I'm not opposed to either one. The only way you cut him is if you do get one of those top guys in free agency that are available, or that's the only way you cut him if you get one of those guys. If you don't get one of those guys and you're going to draft a guy, you restructuring and you keep him. I don't want the pass rush to be dependent on the inside pass rush to be dependent on a rookie. I don't know. I don't think that that's a good idea. So you keep Eric Armstead in that situation. So those are the two scenarios in which he can stay and which he can go. And at this point, it can go either way. Now, for this next guy, we're going to leave it right there. And for this next guy, Mr. Walker Little, man, you want to talk about getting Wally pipped. And, his play hadn't been up to par. Um, it hadn't been great. He wasn't god awful. He wasn't god awful to where he was a turnstile, at left tackle. He didn't look like he hadn't really looked like Will Campbell in the Super Bowl, which was an all time bad. But Will was still supposedly dealing with some injuries and things like that, and Seattle outcoached the Patriots because they weren't helping him. They weren't helping him at all. But as far as Walker Little is concerned, he got hurt, and Cole Van Lannon got in his spot and played better. That's just how it goes, man. That's how the cookie crumbles. I mean, uh, so going forward, Cole Van Lannon is your left tackle because they paid him. They paid him like a starting left tackle, and he's going to be your guy. Ezra Cleveland is guard as that guard. Patrick McCary, he's a candidate, I think, for a restructuring contract. I've heard some people talking about him potentially being cut, but I just think they're going to restructure McCary. Hainsey is your guy at center, and Anton Harrison had been your best lineman for a great portion of the season as well. So I mean, he's a swing tackle now. He's a backup tackle who can kick in at guard. He did play a little better at guard as things went along. He struggled a bit against Buffalo in the playoff game when Cole Van Lannon got hurt. But the money that he's going to make, man, we're talking about $14 million for a backup tackle / guard. He definitely it's definitely a restructure for sure. But he is definitely a candidate for to be cut, to be moved on from, and then go on the draft and double dip and go after another swing tackle, two more swing tackles, or a swing tackle and a guard. So for Walker Little, this may be it for him. He's the one out of the three I'm talking about today is the one I see most likely not being back. But James Gladstone has already said that everybody on that offensive line is coming back next year. They are all under contract, and everybody is coming back. But does that mean everybody is going to be on the 2026 roster? No, that doesn't mean that, because things change. Free agency changes things. The draft changes things. Other teams cutting players that you may be interested in changes things. So for Walker Little, what do I think? I think he restructures and he stays for now. For now, and they'll still go into the draft and draft a few guys, because you still have Wyatt Milam as a guard, and some say he can play tackle as well. So you still have you have a few young guys, and they're going to continue to bolster that offensive line. They're going to draft another guy or two. But Walker Little, if I had to guess, he gets restructured and he stays for now. And then if they feel like they've upgraded the position, especially if they got guys that they really, really like, young guys, they're going to pave the way for them to be the future and move on from him. That's what I think. Keep him restructured, keep him for now, and then once you get guys that you're comfortable with, hey, let him move on and go find another team, and reignite his career. So that's it for that. So we're gonna leave it right there, of course, and we're going to go to Brian Thomas Jr. BTJ. Now, BTJ is one where he's on his rookie deal. He's not like the others where he's making a large sum of money, and he's potentially older and might not be worth the contract that he has because he's on his rookie deal. So he does have that going for him. Now, me personally, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think you do not let 6'3", 210 plus pound, 4'3" speed, can make guys miss. Who had 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns in his rookie year. And if he had have played every game this past season, he would have had 1,000 yards again, even with the season looking the way it did. Because when I went to look at his numbers, he had 700 yards receiving, but he missed a few games. If he plays all 17 games, he clears 1,000 yards. And so he had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. And you would consider that a success, even with the way it looked at times last year with the drops and his supposed hesitancy to go over the middle. And I seen a stat where Trevor Lawrence completion percentage, over the middle is one of the tops in the league. Because everybody swore it's because of Trevor Lawrence. These guys don't want to play for him. He's out there throwing hospital balls and getting his guys killed, and you can't play with a guy you don't trust, and blah blah blah. Man, that dude was dropping passes in training camp before anybody smacked him. It's just what it is. This is what it is. So that whole the whole narrative around Trevor is hilarious, especially before he took off at the end of last year. But we'll talk about that on a future show. But as far as Brian Thomas Jr., can he regain that rookie form? He absolutely can. He absolutely can. He's with a coaching staff and a front office that I think is going to give him every opportunity to do so. It will be made plain and made easy for him. They will, as they say, grease the skids so he can be successful, because a successful Brian Thomas Jr. Helps a successful Jaguars team all day long and every day and twice on Sunday. That's how it goes. So I think he can regain that form. Now, what is that going to take? I don't know, because you don't know what ails him. Whether it's and these are just things that people have thrown out there. Him losing his friend Kyron Lacy, the wide receiver for LSU, who self-deleted, and so supposedly maybe some other issues going on outside of family or within his family. Confidence. Where his confidence? Where is his confidence? Where his mental? Where he is? It's been a big thing, especially with the younger generation, and talking about mental health. And I get some of it, and then I'm kind of and I'm a millennial, so I'm a little bit of a dinosaur when it comes to stuff like that, because yeah, I understand your mental health and things about that and that nature and where you are, but I also am a proponent of get your sugar honey iced tea together as well. You got to press through. You have to press through. You got to figure out why, and you have to press through. You cannot let it hold you back and let it snowball, as it looked like it did for Brian Thomas Jr. So, supposedly they have, sports therapists or psychologists that those guys talk to, and hopefully they can get to the root of the cause. Now, one thing I do want Brian Thomas Jr. to do, and I'm sure that he'll be open to it. He'll be open to doing so as well, is him, having a conversation with Jimmy Smith, and him talking to Jimmy Smith, because Jimmy Smith was critical of him, but it wasn't in a malicious way. He just talked about his stance was too high, and basically like, yo, he's our greatest receiver. And when our greatest receiver speaks, I listen because he was the best. He was one of the best receivers I had ever seen in my life. Outside of a Jerry Rice or T.O. or Randy Moss, and Jimmy Smith was it. Him and Keenan McCardell were thunder and lightning. And, peanut butter and jelly, man. That's what they were. He blocked Jimmy on Twitter or X, and because of him being critical of him, dude, let that go. Let that hurt go. Move on from that. Have a conversation with Jimmy about, what you can do, and what you need to do, and just, pick his brain. He has there's coaches being paid to coach him, and people in the building he can listen to. But listening to a legend and talking and sitting down with a legend, I think can go a long way. That's just me personally. That's like if I had the opportunity to talk to a Shannon Sharp or Stephen A. Smith or something like that. Absolutely. Let's talk. Let's sit down, and because I want to get to where you are. So that's how it goes. But man, we're gonna leave it right there. But in closing, BTJ, I think, will regain that form, and he will, develop into, another top receiver, because Parker Washington is taking off like a rocket, and that's part of the reason I think he will. Um, Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington are big reasons why I think Brian Thomas Jr. will get back to his rookie form, because competition, man, competition, competition breeds excellence, man. That's what's going to happen. He's going to see these guys, and he's going to compete day in and day out, and they're going to hold him accountable. Trevor's going to hold him accountable, and I'm sure he's going to hold himself accountable. So I have faith in Brian Thomas Jr. But if somebody come and they say, hey, we want BTJ and we will knock your socks off, I think they're going to listen. I think they're going to listen, because remember, they didn't draft him. Remember, this regime did not draft him. That's not their guy. It's not their guy. So, so that's what it is. But, for now, I think he's on the team. But we're going to leave it right there. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. My name is Brandon Lampley. Hey, I love talking to you guys, man. I got to get in that comment section and chop it up with you guys. Hey, you got any suggestions about what you want me to cover, news, rumors, anything like that? Holla at your boy, and I am on it. So, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, wherever, Instagram, you can find me, DM me, and holla at me. It's all love, man. It's all love. But until next time, I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.